All right. Here we are, another day of Touchdown Nerdcast, starring Jordan, Frank, and Andrew. It
Pump
is
Mountain.
a Pump Mountain, August 27th, 2023. We have the last of week 3 preseason games going on today. Was there only one? I don't know. Just one game today?
I thought there was two.
But nonetheless, um, most of the
Only got
teams
one.
have wrapped up their preseason, and we have about 14 days for the start of the season. I think KC versus Detroit is the opening game of the year.
Thursday night football.
Thursday night football. I think that's going to be a great game.
It's going to be high scoring.
I hope so. High scoring is good for fantasy football players.
It is.
Unless you're one of those leagues that carries a defense and you care about your one of those two defenses scoring you points. Um, but I feel like for most of us, defense is an afterthought.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Randomly, I heard that the Bears were contacted KC about getting Chris Jones. Did you guys hear that?
I heard that they were interested in possibly Jonathan Taylor too.
I think both those players would help the Bears. I don't think either of those teams will trade us their players, but
I hope the Bears don't trade a first round pick to try to get one of them. But
word on the street
I'd be
is,
okay with Chris Jones.
yeah, I wouldn't trade a first round pick.
No.
I heard Chris Jones is willing to sit out half the season.
Really?
Yep, because he's getting up there in age, so I think he wants to get one final contract. And I think he like
Only 29.
I think he has to play more than half the games to enter free agency.
He's a good player though.
So I think he can like miss 8 games as long as he plays the last 9 games. That he can enter free agency next year. So, I mean, if I was the Bears, I would take him. I'd take Jonathan Taylor too.
I would take Jonathan Taylor for a year deal, not for like what he wants to be re-signed for like 4 years and a big contract.
I feel like the Bears are one of the few teams who could afford to like give up a 4th round pick and have him on a 1-year lease. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen?
I would take him for 1 year, that's for sure.
4th round pick,
Yeah,
1 year
easily.
rental. I think
Easily.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, you only need to play 6 games to accrue a season. So he could sit out conceivably 11 weeks and still play the last 6. Anywho.
Is that from the rule book, the official rule book, or the unwritten
That is
one?
from NFL Operations, NFL.com.
Nice. We got the reference too. So we are a legit podcast company over here. We cite all of our sources, and we pay for the rights to use material, and or we don't use the material if we don't pay for it.
We have the greatest asset ever in Frank McDaniel.
That's right.
Don't you forget it.
The human computer.
Mm-hmm. He is the nerd in Touchdown Nerdcast. Some of these games yesterday were just absolute blowouts. And really, I feel like it's hard to take away anything from the preseason. But I want to say the one thing that you can take away is if you're not a first string starter, you're second string, you're generally playing against other second stringers in the preseason. Correct? So,
Correct.
And if you happen to suck in the preseason playing against the second string, what faith are we to have in you when you're to go up against the first string of everybody else's teams? So,
Are you referring to a certain position or
I think
Just running backs in general, or
I think all positions in general. Like,
Okay.
I think rarely do you see somebody struggle against second stringers who comes in and plays at a high level for fantasy football purposes. Unless you can give me some good examples, I can't think of anybody
I'll find some for you.
who's a preseason bum, second stringer, who ended up having first string fantasy relevance. I'm sure there's somebody out there, but
I bet you liked watching the Aaron Rodgers Garrett Wilson connection.
yeah, let's start there.
3 catches, 30 yards, and a touchdown.
I love that. I am huge on Garrett Wilson. He is one of my favorite wide receivers. I feel confident that what's he going as, like wide receiver 11, 12, something like that?
I don't.
ADP?
I,
Right in there.
I would
Yeah.
be ecstatic to get him like in the second round on a snake draft.
I think that he is a lock for top 14, top 15 in that realm.
I think he's gonna go for like 13 or 1400 yards and like 8 to 10 touchdowns.
Well, I appreciate your support of my player. Yeah, hopefully that's a connection that pays off for all the owners of Garrett Wilson. And I feel like Rodgers is probably going to be rostered in most leagues. And hopefully he's fantasy worthy as well. Being a Bear fan myself, I'd rather root for him now that he's a Jet. Because
I'm okay with that too.
I could not bring myself to that conclusion if he was still a Packer. If both those guys were Packers, I would be like, no. It's hard for me to
I'm with
want.
you on that.
I mean, I would do it. If I had to draft Packers players, I would do it, but I would be upset about it. Any other fantasy people stick out to you this weekend?
Not really. I feel like it's just tough to tell. Like some teams are running their top offense out for 1 or 2 series. Some teams had no, like even second stringers out in some of their games.
I wonder if
I mean, for my
did they have discussions beforehand? Like, hey, are you running your first team? Okay, I'll run my first team. And then other games are like, you're running your second team? Okay, I'll run my second team.
I
They
think
do
some
not
teams
coordinate. They do whatever they want to do.
I thought that it was just basically this is what we're doing. Like, and I think it was nice to see, like, I know we're going to go into some tight end talk for those that aren't lucky enough to get Kelce or Andrews in the first 3 rounds of a draft. But I think watching Deshaun Watson with the Njoku and Amari Cooper, selfishly having Amari Cooper, I like seeing that. I don't know. It's hard to tell. I mean, Deontay Johnson and Pickens both had long catches for Pickett in their game. But again, guys that you think should do well or have decent years. I mean, it's nice to see, I guess, early in the preseason, like having some chemistry or getting some targets in games that really don't necessarily matter. But I ultimately don't think there's a ton to gain from what you see in preseason. I think if you come out of preseason with none of your starting fantasy guys hurt, you're in good shape.
You know who I'm a fan of this preseason?
Who?
I was really impressed by Rashawn Johnson. I think he's doing everything
You
right.
are just
The stats don't
sarcastic.
tell the full story. No,
This
I
is
like what
ultimate
he's doing on the
sarcasm.
field. He's not missing his blocks. You know, he's doing the important, all the little things right that will eventually get him on the field. So I'm looking
When
forward to
we
having that.
gave props to Frank for being the biggest asset on the show, I now take that away.
The nerd and nerdcast is no longer
We'll see at the end of the year. We'll see at the end of the year.
Okay. If you're backing him up, what you think he should go for above his ADP then?
Well, what's his current ADP?
You're the
1,076.
stat guy. You Tell me.
You're asking about ADP.
He's behind Khalil Herbert and he's behind Deontay Foreman. Like, come on.
No, Deontay Foreman is arguably cuttable.
Yeah, so is Roshan Johnson. That guy should be at a buffet, not in the NFL.
He should be at a buffet. He needs to bulk up.
Yeah. I don't know.
I'm pulling up his ADP right now.
I think we should take this seriously, Frank, and not give bad advice. His ADP
we're gonna lose
on
viewers
Yahoo
because
is
you just
57th.
spoke on behalf of Roshan Johnson.
57th on Yahoo.
If you're not a Chicago Bears fan,
Not
you
that
don't
I
even
think-
know who Roshan Johnson is.
Yeah, I'd put him higher than that.
What's his
sure.
ADP?
57th.
He's rated behind after Deontay Foreman. I have him above Deontay.
I think you're just flipping coins at that point.
So I'd move him up at least 3 or 4 spots for a rookie or for a running back.
How come he's not on your? How come he's not on your keeper league team in Andy's league?
Because all my guys are better than that.
Ah. So if you could have 25 running backs, he might be on their roster.
Yeah, he would definitely.
What I'm hearing
if we had one more bench spot,
I think Andy should increase the bench spots by 10.
He'd be on my team.
All right, back to reality. I don't know what you're watching when you're watching Roshan, but maybe he picks up his pass blocks. But as far as executing run plays or catching the ball, I would give him a D-.
Listen, those things will help you get on the field. An opportunity is 90%.
You know what doesn't help get you on the field is when you run 2 carries for 3 yards and you're on the sideline with an oxygen tank. Looked like Phil Taylor running like a 64-yard touchdown fumble recovery back.
I want to see you run 3 yards in the NFL.
I would, and I wouldn't need an oxygen tank to do it.
We'll never know because you'll never get there. All right. I'll let you guys talk about real stuff.
So I thought, at least on the other side of the ball, I thought Stephon Diggs looked good. I thought Gabe Davis looked bad. I feel like Gabe Davis just does not have the hands to be a reliable wide receiver.
He's just a deep threat. He's like a Rashad Bateman to me. Like he might have a week where McCole Hardman type, where it's like he might have the one game where he's 3 catches, 106 yards and a touchdown, and one of those catches is for 50 yards. And then he's gonna have weeks where he's like 1 catch for 10 yards, and that's all he does.
Yeah, his historical catch rate is not good.
Yeah, but you're not going to draft Gabe Davis as your wide receiver 1 or 2.
No,
you might get him as a flex guy or even a first off the bench type guy. But yeah, he's just never going to give you a Stephon Diggs like number. I mean, maybe every few weeks you might get a good week out of him, but nothing.
He's just going to have good weeks when you have teams that plan to just double and triple team Stephon Diggs.
Right.
And he's going to get open over the top on something, and Josh Allen's going to find him on an extended play or something like that.
Or the corner covering him slipped and, he's just suddenly wide open.
Yeah.
So
I think it's hard in fantasy, especially if you're a PPR or have PPR, to take anybody who's targeted as few times as guys like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather have a guy that's going to come out and even like a Cortland Sutton. I mean, when he was terrible last year, he was averaging 7 to 8 targets a game, even though that would just turn into like 5 catches for 60 yards. Like in a full point PPR, that was still 11 points.
Yeah. What's Gabe Davis currently going at right now?
I can tell you.
Gabe Davis, Fantasy Pros has
95 overall.
38th for wide receiver. So we're talking this top tier of your fourth string wide receiver, which sounds okay to me.
Yeah, that's what we said.
Yeah, fourth,
Maybe a
fourth.
flex guy or
Yeah,
first off the bench.
flex or first off the bench. These are some of the names going around where he is. George Pickens,
I'd much rather have Pickens.
Mike
Same.
Evans.
Way much rather have Mike Evans.
Would you rather have Jackson Smith and Najigba? Jordan Addison? Rookies? Would you rather have a rookie than knowing who Gabe
Yes.
Davis is?
Yes.
Yeah, I like the upside over because they could end up being top 10 wide receivers.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Pickens and the Mike Evans comparison is unfair. I'm seeing them as wide receiver 31 and 32. And Gabe Davis, I'm seeing as wide receiver 39. So it's
Yeah,
kind of
I was
a
looking
big
at
jump
that.
there.
I was looking at receivers 30 through 39. And
Okay. Some wide receivers just after Gabe Davis and then Brandon Cooks, Cortland
I'd,
Sutton.
I'd rather take Sutton and Cooks.
I'd definitely rather have Sutton. I never draft Brandon Cooks. I never draft Gabe Davis. Um, I mean, not that they're bad options, but and then the next one, wide receiver 42, is Michael Thomas. Um, I might take a Gabe Davis over Michael Thomas just because he's one of those
yeah,
guys I've been burned by too many times.
I'd take Gabe Davis over Michael Thomas too. I just don't trust that Thomas is going to be back at all.
you just can't trust
Yeah.
Thomas at this point in his career.
No.
And
Not
these are just ADPs, so it's not how they're kind of projected to finish. They're just where people are taking them.
right. I think some sites do ADPs well. I think other sites do it poorly. Like
It's hard to go.
I
It's
look,
hard to go off that.
yeah. With us in our league, we use a Yahoo platform for our league, and I don't trust Yahoo's rankings. I just like the way that their platform operates.
I think what's tough with ADP and anything that you do is that every league is so different, whether it's a keeper, auction, dynasty, redraft, whether it's a snake or a straight draft, whether it's a 10 team or 12 team. Like, I think all those things, and like your league having 2 flex spots versus most leagues that have 1 flex spot, like, to me, that changes the ADP on a lot of those guys. As soon as you get a little bit deeper past the first 4 or 5 rounds of a draft, you just have no clue who's going to take who at that point. Or like, there are going to be leagues that Gabe Davis could ultimately be like a free agent guy, like depending on if it's a 10 team league where you don't have a giant bench, or it's set up differently where more running backs go or whatever. I think there's just so many different options for league styles that it's hard to have a consistent ADP for any player.
Right, but ADP is essentially just useful for knowing when a guy can be expected to go, and you can use it to gauge. Okay, this guy might go soon, and I really want him. I might grab him a little before his ADP just so I can get him, rather than risking losing out. That's the only way to actually use it. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter. Definitely.
Do we? Did Brock Purdy play yesterday?
Brock Purdy?
Yeah.
I thought he played like one series or was like 4 for 6 or something. Let me double check that.
We did not. This happened after our last episode. Was the Trey Lance news?
Yeah,
Trey
Purdy was
Lance.
5 for 9, 73 yards and a rushing touchdown.
So not bad for preseason. Yeah, Trey Lance news happened after our last episode.
That was your boy, Andy.
No,
that
it
was your
wasn't.
boy.
But I think that's crazy that what a trade. Trey Lance, 3 first-round picks, right? And they ended up cutting him after 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Not cutting him, but trading him. So
I think it's very telling to see how high he got drafted the year he got drafted. On top of that, in his short time that he got to play, he wasn't very successful. And then on top of that, seeing where his head is at, where it's like he wasn't even like a Teddy Bridgewater, where it was like, hey, I got drafted really high. I need to find a spot that I can go start. He basically told Shanahan that I need to find a spot where I can be the number 2 backup. Like, you as a pick that was that high already have an understanding for yourself, unless you're just being super humble, that you're just like, I just need to go be a backup. Like, I don't need to be the third string. I need to be the second string guy, instead of like so many quarterbacks that would be like, I need to go find a spot that I could start.
yeah,
Now, what does
I
that mean for Dak? Anything? Just he's just the new backup or what?
I think so.
I think that it's that Dak has not been able to stay healthy per se for the whole season. The last 2 years, he hasn't played every game.
Yeah,
And I think he's starting to get to that age, and in the team's situation that he's in, with Dallas being such a big time like business ran team, and obviously Jerry Jones cares about the public opinion of their franchise, that I think people are starting to get frustrated with the fact that Dak has not been successful outside of just putting up good numbers in the regular season. So I don't know if that's maybe to push them to that next spot, or if they're considering in the next year or two trying to get rid of Dak and letting Trey Lance kind of be the first guy up to be their franchise quarterback.
I don't think he's anything more than a backup in this first year. And they have Trey Lance for 5 years, right? Because he's a first overall or third overall pick, first round draft pick. I think it's 4 years with a fifth-year option.
Yep.
So I don't think he's any more than a backup in year one, but I feel like you might have the story pretty close, Jordan, in that they can pull the trigger on pulling Dak Prescott or getting rid of him if they underperform.
Yeah, I don't think it was a bad. I don't think it was a bad move for Dallas. I think it was probably the right move too for San Francisco. Clearly, they weren't going to use him, so
Yep. I heard someone say that like if they had drafted Mac Jones to San Francisco, do you think Mac Jones' career would have been better?
no, because I think I was a Mac Jones hater. I thought he was going to be Zach Wilson or Mitchell Trubisky. I said that when he got drafted, as high as he was going to go, I was like, the only place I could see him going where he has any kind of success is if he goes to Belichick in New England. So I think if he would have wound up most other places, I don't think he would have been even as good as he's been so far with New England.
Interesting. Okay. I just thought somebody mentioned it. Thought it was interesting. Um, what I do think is interesting from the San Francisco's preseason game is their rushing effectiveness. Tyrion Davis Price and Jordan Mason both averaged over 6 yards a carry, and it's their third and fourth string running back. And uh, that's pretty good. I feel like Christian McCaffrey is going to have a very good season in that system. Would you, knowing this, say it's half PPR, be willing to bump CMC to first overall pick in your draft?
If you can guarantee me he plays in 17 games, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. And it also ultimately comes down to a matter of preference. You know, if you want to go Justin Jefferson or CMC, that's fine. They're both, when healthy, worthy of that pick. But so far, we've seen CMC get hurt more. So it just bumps him down.
Yeah. I will say that I feel confident in the backup running back for San Francisco. Whoever that
Well,
is, almost like if they all got injured, I would still consider rostering the running back in San Francisco.
right. Well, last year I had Tyrion Davis Price before they traded for CMC, thinking he would back up Elijah Mitchell. But I mean, this season you can't pick up Davis Price or any of the other guys even without an injury. You're just wasting a roster spot unless you're in a dynasty league.
I
Yeah.
agree 100%. I mean, I think Mitchell is a really good safety handcuff to have just because he's been effective in that system. They will give him some touches even with Christian McCaffrey healthy. But ultimately, Christian McCaffrey is going to get the ball when they're in a situation where they need the games at the line or they trust him, I think, more than anybody else. So
They clearly trust Mitchell, knowing that they sat him for this game.
Yeah. I just have a lot of faith in that offensive line and Kyle Shanahan's system that those backups would be roster worthy should CMC go down.
I think the tough
Starting
part
starting with Elijah first.
I think the tough part is that San Francisco and Christian McCaffrey still put up really good fantasy points last year once he went to San Francisco. But I think the dynamic that is tough when it comes to would you take him first overall is the numbers and touches he got when he was with Carolina and he was the entire offense. There is that spread the wealth in San Francisco, particularly with like I agree with Frank, like there's not another running back to own on that team besides Mitchell because they use Debo Samuel as that too. Like you've got like three guys ultimately that they have no fear running out of the backfield. You've got Brandon Ayuk, who looks like one of the sleeper mid-tier wide receivers that could finish as a wide receiver, back-end wide receiver one with the chemistry he had with Purdy. I just feel like, and Kittle, obviously, I mean, you just have a lot of offensive firepower there that with a young quarterback who nobody thought he was going to do anything last year when he came in, he's going to rely on spreading the wealth, I think, to use those weapons. They're going to continue. Shanahan's a smart enough offensive coordinator that he's going to take that pressure off his quarterback by distributing the ball to so many guys. So I think even if McCaffrey stays healthy, his day and age of seeing the amount of touches he got when he was with Carolina and they funneled the offense through him aren't there anymore.
True. Could see that. Imagine how easy it is being the QB of San Francisco when you have Debo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, why didn't Aaron Rodgers want to go to that team?
Right. And then you look at the teams like the Bears and the Texans last year, and you're like, why did they suck? And then you look at San Francisco, and you're like, what? You have all these weapons, and you have the best left tackle in the league. All right. Let's get to our topic of the day, and that is top 10 tight ends. And I do think most people out there would go in revert in from 10 to 1, but we all know that that's pointless because we know who number 1 and 2 are. If you guys disagree with me, let me know now, but Travis Kelce's number 1 and Mark Andrews is number 2.
That's who I got 1 and 2 as well.
I like Hawkinson too.
Okay. Do you have Hawkinson ahead of Mark Andrews?
That's why I just said I like Hawkinson too. Number 2.
Okay.
I would
Why?
like Hawkinson a lot more if there wasn't Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison.
Well, I mean, one's a rookie. We'll see how he does. Hawkinson, okay. If you liked Hawkinson in Detroit, they used him more and more effectively in Minnesota.
I agree
So
with
still
that.
in Minnesota, he's doing a full season of Minnesota attention. I think will only drive him up, and he's in a more pass happy offense instead of Baltimore, which, when Mark Andrews was the number one quarterback or tight end that season, it was one of the first seasons Lamar was in the league, if he was even in the league at that point. I don't know. And they didn't have much else going on. These days, sure, Lamar can sling it sometimes, but he does still like to take off and run, and that's going to limit your upside. So, that takes away red zone touchdowns. That takes away, you know, some other opportunities. So I bump up Hawkinson above Andrews just because of the kind of offense they're in. Not to say I don't like Andrews. I just prefer Hawkinson.
I think Hawkinson is going to be a large targets, large PPR tight end this year. Whether or not he gets down the field like Mark Andrews does is the question.
I like Hawkinson. I have him as my third tight end behind Andrews. I just think Andrews and Lamar are going to get back to the page they were on 2 years ago. That's the only reason I have him a little bit higher. I agree with Frank though on everything with like the pass attempts and passing offensive style. Like I'd much rather like have that out of Minnesota. But I just think Mark Andrews is going to have a really good year this year. So I just have him slightly ahead of Hawkinson still. But I don't think anyone's close to what Kelce is.
No. Yeah,
no,
he might be getting up there.
We're
What
not
is he,
arguing
34 this
Kelce.
year? No.
Yeah.
He's still got plenty left in the tank, and his quarterback loves him. There's a reason I took him fourth overall in a draft last night. So
that's the guy I'm looking at next Sunday when I do my redraft league at pick 6. I'm hoping Kupp, Tyreek Hill, or Kelce, and it's going to be real tough. I would think it's full PPR, so I'm leaning towards taking Tyreek Hill if he's there. If not, it's going to be a real hard decision.
See, of the three, did you freeze? Of the three, I prefer Kelce, just because of Cooper Kupp's injury history.
That's why I would take Kelce ahead of Kupp for sure.
Tua's injury history also has got to concern you.
That does concern me a little.
Somebody taps him on the head, he could be out for 6 weeks and then and maybe even retire. He's already had 30 concussions at least from my count. So
no, I'm fully anticipating taking Travis Kelce at pick 6 next Sunday.
Yeah. But they're all good options. It's just a matter of you want to get that first round pick as close to being right as possible.
One in a full point PPR league, taking Kelce is like you're taking one of those wide receivers.
Yeah, he's going to put up wide receiver 1 numbers anyway. So
as
long as him and Mahomes stay healthy, even if Mahomes goes down, Kelce's still going to be a very good option. So
I'm really hoping I can snag Kelce at that 1.6 spot, and when I swing back, there's like a Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Amon-Ra St. Brown sitting there. I'm pretty sold that I'm going to go with the no running back draft strategy in this league, because last year the 3 running backs, not only do they tend to get hurt more than receivers seem to get hurt, the full point PPR just killed me last year going against teams that were stacking Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams on the same team together. And even if I had Jonathan Taylor healthy, it's like Jonathan Taylor and Saquon Barkley still weren't matching those points.
Right.
Back to tight ends. Can I say a couple things that might concern you? TJ Hawkinson is currently not practicing with a back injury.
That's what he says. He's holding out for a contract.
All right. Do you think he'll miss games because he wants a new contract?
Honestly, I don't, but we'll see. We have a week to figure that out. I think the Vikings know what they have on their hands, and I think that their window could be closing for a chance at a division title at least, and Hawkinson's a big part of that. So I think they're going to have to cave to him a little bit and make him some sort of offer, or Hawkinson knows the same. He could just hold out maybe a couple games, but we'll see.
Yeah.
I'm just as anxious to find out.
It's hard to see Cole Kmet get an extension when he doesn't have one yet.
Yeah.
Okay. Who do you have as tight end 4?
Tight end 4 to me is George Kittle.
See, I have Darren Waller. For whatever reason, I'm real big on him this year. I like what he brings to the table. We saw what he did in I don't know, Las Vegas with the Raiders, wherever they were at the time. Um, but I think he could be a good security blanket for Danny Dimes, and see how he does.
And I'm
I
not
like
that far off from you, Frank, because I got Kittle at 4 just because of what his resume has been and the fact that he's been able to stay healthier. I think you've got a young quarterback leaning on him. I think I'm with you. I think Waller's going to have a big year too. His injury concerns the last year and a half scare me a little bit more than Kittle. Seems like a safer option.
You
Um,
think?
he's he's more familiar with the offense being in San Francisco for the last 4 or 5 years versus this is new scenery for Waller. Not saying that that's going to necessarily make a difference, but I got Kittle and Waller kind of back to back at that 4 or 5 spot. I think is pretty interchangeable. I think at that point it's just preference.
You know, for the last 3 seasons, Kittle's missed 13 games.
Yeah. But again, Waller has played fewer games than Kittle. I can't get it.
I
The
think
last 3 seasons, Kittle's missed, or I mean, Waller has missed. Let's see, 8, 14 games. So he's actually missed less. Anywho,
It doesn't feel like that.
that's
I
fine.
feel like George Kittle, like you were saying with the 49ers before, is one of many options, and Darren Waller is probably the best pass catcher on the New York Giants now.
Yeah.
So I think if health is the only holding thing back for Darren Waller, I wouldn't bank on injuries happening again, and they're pretty comparable. So if I had to pick between the two, I'd go Darren Waller based on his, probable targets being, you know, 20 to
Yeah.
30 more targets more than George Kittle, I would guess.
Yeah. I think it's purely just preference based. I mean, you have both sides. There's more mouths to feed in San Francisco, so that allows Kittle to kind of blow the cover off of defense because you can't necessarily game plan just to shut him down. Um, I think if you're going to scheme against the Giants, you shut down Saquon Barkley and you shut down Darren Waller, and they got nothing else left. But at the same point, that does leave Waller to have more opportunity at higher targets per game than somebody like George Kittle.
All right. And then me, the Kyle Pitts fan, I have Kyle Pitts as number 5, and I have George Kittle as number 6.
I have Kyle
Yeah, I'll
Pitts.
still put Kittle at 5, and Pitts is a toss up. I hate that second tier of tight ends.
I have Pitts at 9.
Oh, you jumped a lot of people. So who's all in front of Pitts?
I got Dallas Goedert at number 6, Evan Ingram at 7, Njoku at 8. And then I got 9 with Pitts and 10 with Greg Dulcich.
Oh, dang. That's some big news right there.
I mean, I think you can make an argument for Freiermuth being there, but I think the Jerry Jeudy injury will at least, I mean, Dulcich had a pretty good year last year with a terrible Russell Wilson as a rookie.
Well, he had 411 yards, Dolchich, last year on 55 targets.
Yeah, I would not be
Granted, he
surprised.
only played 10 games, but
Yeah, I would not be surprised to see that close to double. I could see him with closer to
wow.
80 targets, 700,
Okay.
800 yards.
Yeah,
But
so that's
again, I mean, I think at that point when you're talking tight end 10, I mean, I could see Komet, depending on what the usage there is going to be, Freiermuth. Like, to me, it was kind of between Freiermuth and Dulcich. I just gave the edge because Judy's hurt.
interesting.
That's pretty low for Kyle Pitts, though.
Yeah.
I'm just not a Kyle Pitts fan. I think he's a phenomenal athlete, but he reminds me kind of like a Jermichael Finley when he was on the Green Bay Packers. Had one really good year where it looked like, oh, this guy's going to be the next Tony Gonzalez type tight end, and then that was it. So, I mean, I don't necessarily trust the quarterback situation in Atlanta. They're a run first team. Um, and I don't know, Pitts put up the yards his rookie year, but I'm not saying he couldn't do it. That's where I would have him going into this season. I could change my mind if he winds up being. I wouldn't be shocked if he was tight end 3 or 4 when this season got done.
Yeah, I think with Pitts, the whole thing hinges on Desmond Ritter's progress. We didn't see it enough to anoint him the savior of Atlanta last season. So if he takes a step, yeah, Pitts to me could be easily top 6 or 7. Um, I mean, obviously he's got the upside to be a top 3 tight end. We just have to see the quarterback play back that up, which might be too soon. Might be too soon for me. I think I would definitely take a Freer Muth over him. Um, and I mean, Dulcich, if we're still hinging on him at all, I like guys even like Jawan Johnson over him. Not that I don't like Dulcich, I like some other guys more.
I get that. I
Might
think
even
Dulcich is kind of my, like, if you're talking at that tight end 10 spot ish, like it's kind of all a crapshoot at that point. Like I know a lot of
yes,
people are so high on that Kincaid guy from Buffalo, but you still have Dawson Knox there, and you have so many offensive weapons that they tend to use, and they're going to funnel the offense through Stephon Diggs. That's just what they do.
right. No, I hear you. I'll put my Kyle Pitts at 6 or 7, right up there with Goddard probably, and Freer Muth. And then I probably go. Like I said, I'm big on Jacksonville this year, so I'll go an Evan Ingram. Um, and I do like a Jawan Johnson as a sleeper. I think with Derek Carr in town, uh, you could see some more. You might use Jawan like he used Darren Waller. So I think he's a guy who may not be top 10, but to me he's. Um, I know they have him ranked closer to like around 20th, but I'd probably put him closer to 12. And then you got
I think he's a good sleeper
Chigo,
pick too. I think he's a
Chigo in
great sleeper
Tennessee.
pick.
Yeah, for sure. I just
Chigo
think he's
Conquo.
undervalued. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the top 2 sleeper picks for me would be Juwan and Chigo Conquo. Yeah, Chig is like was he was amazing for like the last 4 games of the season, and you just have to be like, is that the norm or was that just fluke?
Right.
Juwan Johnson has all the skill sets to be a great tight end, but he's never received targets, and I don't know why that's not. Like maybe the offense just doesn't flow through a tight end, or maybe he's just not as good as a pass catcher as we think he is. Maybe they need him to block in line more than what he's capable of. I don't know.
I think we're going to see a very different New Orleans offense this year than we've seen in the past. So we'll see
Yeah.
how it shakes out.
Yep. Okay. And then I'll just round out my top 10. So I have Kelce, Andrews, Waller, Hawkinson, Pitts, Kittle. And then my 7 through 10, I have Goddard, Fryermuth, Ingram, Njoku.
I can get on board with that.
Yep. It's not bad.
As always, tight end is a complete shit show in fantasy football, and unless you have Travis Kelce, there's no guarantees. Mark Andrews is your next best chance at that until somebody elevates themselves to Travis Kelce like levels of consistency. It's always going to be a hit and miss position every week. Okay, well, that's the end of our show for today. Thank you for joining Touchdown Nerdcast. feel free to follow us on Twitch, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you can find us. We'll try to get some more content out there on Instagram. Maybe we'll get a website going. But we will talk to you later.
Time for some COD.
Bye.
Peace.